welcome to the first ever book roundup, I suppose, book vlog. Not really sure how to like start this, intro this, but welcome, I suppose, if you're new to the channel. Welcome if you're not new to the channel, but like you're a subscriber already, or you already watch my videos. Welcome to the first ever book vlog. So because it's the first video and because I've literally just moved into this apartment, as you'll know if you have watched the Australia vlogs, sus and I were is the best spot to do these. So like literally we moved in 2 weeks ago and this is the only corner of the room that is like complete, and I've got a little candle lit. You might not be able to even see that the candle is lit, but imagine the vibes are cozy because it's a book vlog and we like to be cozy in the book vlogs. So yeah, this is my little corner that's been done, and it's all, everything in this corner is Kmart. Even the bath towel that's hanging up very aesthetically behind me. So yeah, obviously like as a little mini introduction, I don't want to talk too much because we have a lot of books to get through. I want to do January and February because February was moving to Australia, moving to a new continent, new whole everything. So I didn't get around to doing my January wrap up, so we're going to do both in this one. But basically, like as a way of an introduction, I suppose, I have been reading for like the last number of years, obviously since like, you know, I could read, but taking reading like seriously and like reading a lot of books. So last year I read 80 books, the year before I think I read like 70 something books, the year before that I read 100 books. So I set myself the goal of 100 books and I did do it, but not again, that was a lot. So yeah, I'm back to reading around like 60, hopefully this year, maybe even more. Not sure with the whole move to Australia, move to a different continent, but we'll see what happens. But I wanted to have like, yeah, like a little book corner of the internet, I suppose, and chat about books. And I love nothing more than like seeing book reviews, book recommendations, and what other people are reading. So I wanted to jump on that little corner, I suppose. And yeah, welcome to my first ever book video. So I'm going to be using my phone a lot just for reference of everything because I can't remember what I read, and of all the, I think it's going to be 16 books that I read January and February combined, I have one physical book, which is obviously the latest installment in the Fourth Wing Empyrean series that I got in Bali. So if you are very new here, I have been traveling Asia for the last 12 months. So as I would have loved to bring my library of books with me traveling, I was not able to. So I purchased a Kindle, and it is like the best and worst thing that's ever happened because I have over 100 books on my Kindle TBR now, and I feel like I read slower on the Kindle, and I always prefer like an actual physical book. But obviously I can't bring that traveling with me, and the Kindle monthly sales are like the worst thing ever on Amazon because I just buy like 20 books every single month, and then I just keep adding to my TBR like I would with my physical one. So yeah, that's the situation, and I know I've been rambling like a lot, so I want to just get into it. We're starting off with monthly roundups and then we'll see how we go because I do weekly vlogs of my time in Australia. I have a year's worth backlog of travel videos to get through for YouTube, so I'm not sure I'm going to be posting more than one book video a month, but we will see. So I will put on the screen all the books that I read in January and then February so you can see the covers and things and kind of get an idea of what I did read before we get into the reviews. And I'll just oh, of course I just knocked over my Diet Coke, my Coke Zero, for sake. Okay, a bit of a chaotic start to the vlog, but we're back. Maybe it's first vlog nerves, I don't know. But we'll go through the books that I read in January and February. So these are the books that I read in January. We had Winter Garden by Kristin Hannah, Paris the Memoir by Paris Hilton, The White Album by Joan Didion, Blessings by Chukwuebuka, Ibeh, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, Foster by Claire Keegan, Enchanted Islands by Laura Coffey, Layla by Colleen Hoover, Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder, and of course Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, so the third in the Empyrean series. And then in February I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, Pageboy by Elliot Page, Killjoy by Holly Jackson, The Rewrite by Lizzie Damilola Blackburn, Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, Hook, Line and Single by Phoebe MacLeod, and A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, the second in the ACOTAR series. So much to discuss, much to get through. So 9 books in January, and to kind of give context because I was a bit all over the place. In January I was in New York for Christmas and New Year, so that's where I started the year, and this is where I read Winter Garden by Kristin Hannah. So basically I was in a Christmas theme, obviously winter theme, and this story is set between Russia and America, about 2 sisters and their mother and their like estranged relationship. And overall I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about like Russian history and kind of immigration towards America from Russia, and it was a past and present tense retelling of the mother's childhood and like what she went through as a young mother in the form of her fairy tale. So it's all about family dynamics, relationships, hardships growing up, and also about this like little colony, but like a little village of expats in Alaska that are from Russia that I didn't know it's about. It's kind of like a little Russia in Alaska. But I will say the ending of the book did ruin it for me, and it was just so like unrealistic, and it just made the book not as good for me. I think I give it 4 stars, but up until that point I was really enjoying it, and it was like really sad, and it was really interesting, and like I really wanted to keep reading it, even though it was literary fiction and historical fiction, so it's quite slow paced. But the ending, I was like, is this real? Like, no, like this can't be real. This cannot be how this book ends. So yeah, I dropped off a star for the ending, but I would recommend it. Number 2 was Paris, the Memoir by Paris Hilton. Now, I am not a big memoir person, firstly. Also, secondly, I didn't think I would pick up this book in 2025 or maybe like ever, but I got it for $1 in the West Siders Rare and Used Books on the Upper West Side of New York, and I saw it and I was like, do you know what, I have seen like good reviews for it and I'm interested, I'm intrigued. Color me intrigued, and I saw it and I was like, I will pay $1 for this book, and I'm so glad that I did. Like, I have such a new perspective on Paris Hilton and like what she went through as a teenager and the abuse she suffered to where she is now. Like, she talks all about like obviously her Hilton upbringing, Hilton family legacy, where she says they don't really get much money from the Hilton group because it was her grandfather's and not really in her family. So she was always really determined to make her own fortune and be her own millionaire. And she's done that. Like, she is the iconic OG influencer, the OG it girl. Like, Paris in the 90s was so iconic, and like in the noughties. I watched Simple Life with her and Nicole Richie, and just to learn more about her and her family and just her way of life and the thought around the different things that she did when she was younger and to where she is now. So iconic. She's not just this blonde bimbo that everyone kind of says she is, and that you would think by looking at her and the way she comes across with the baby voice. Like, she is way more than that, and there is actually a lot of thought and purpose behind what she actually does and what she portrays to the outside world. So I would highly recommend reading it. I think I give it 5 stars. I was blown away and just learned a lot about her that I didn't know. So I would highly recommend you check out Paris, the Memoir, and let me know your thoughts. The 3rd book that I read in January was The White Album by Joan Didion. So this is just like a collection of essays by Joan Didion about her time in LA in like the 80s, 90s, I think late 70s and like early 80s. So I read The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion a few years ago and enjoyed her like style of writing. It obviously is a lot about grief, and I wasn't really going through a grief period at the time or anything, so I didn't really get much out of it. And I know if you picked up that book and you were going through a lot of grief, that it would be really helpful, and it is a great book to read at that time of your life. The White Album, like I said, is just a collection of essays and isn't a book that I would race through. Like, it's very slow paced and you just kind of take it as it comes. But a lot of it was about bushfires in LA in the 80s, and I was reading this at the time, at early January, whenever LA was going through like really horrific bushfires at the time, and it was just really almost dystopian that I was reading a book from 40 years ago that was basically saying the exact same thing of what's happening in like today's world, which was really strange. But if you're a fan of Joan Didion and Joan Didion's writing, I would recommend picking it up. It is good. The next book that I read was Blessings by Chukwuebuka Ibeh, I want to say. I really hope I'm not butchering that, but this was very kindly sent to me by Penguin that I picked up before I left for New York, and it reminded me a bit of A Little Life in that it's a very hard book to read because of the context and because of the content of the book. And it's set in Nigeria, and it's about this young boy who grows up gay, and that is illegal in Nigeria, and what he has to go through school and through his adult life. The schooling system in Nigeria was very tough on him as well, and his family relationships like with his father and wider family, and it was really hard to read. Not as traumatizing as A Little Life. That book traumatized me in not a good way, but like it was the most heartbreaking book to read, but I'm so glad that I read it, kind of thing. But this is a shorter version of A Little Life and just like not as heavy. Still with heavy themes, heavy content, but told in like a beautiful way. So definitely one to pick up. Out of the first 4 books that I read this year, I would say that is definitely the best. I give it 5 stars as well. So yeah, highly recommend. And I actually hope to see a lot more from this author. And I want to look into see actually if they have any previous work that I could look up and read, because it was just written so beautifully. 5th book that I read was Foster by Clark Keegan. Very small book. Clark Keegan is the mastermind of short stories, like the expert. So I read Small Things Like These maybe last year, the year before. Again, a very short story, but like so hard hitting in like 100 pages. It's insane the way she does this. I need to see the movie with Cillian Murphy because I think that would be amazing. But Foster is about this family that fosters this little girl, and it's 100 pages. I don't want to give too many spoilers away because literally it's 100 pages, but within such a short frame of time you go through like so many emotions, and I wish there was more. Even though it's like the perfect size and the perfect story, I just wish I had like 300 pages of it rather than 100. And I want to read more Clark Keegan because she's such a good storyteller and such a good writer that I want to get away from these short stories and read like an actual novel. So yeah, I will go looking if there is any Clark Keegan novels out there. If not, Clark Keegan, please write me a novel. The next book that I read in January was Enchanted Islands by Laura Coffey. This was another book that was kindly sent to me over the Christmas period, and looking at the cover I was like, okay, it's like fantasy, maybe like set in the ocean. Obviously islands are involved. It was kind of giving me the House in the Cerulean Sea vibes. Could have been more wrong. This is actually like a non-fiction memoir of sorts set during COVID. So not what I expected. It did intertwine Greek mythology and travel, going to Italy. I think mostly set in Italy and Greece as well. But it's a woman's grapple with her relationship with her father and needing to get out of London during the pandemic. She was living by herself, working from home like everyone else, but hopping around Europe and catching the sun. And a lot of it did transport me to those places though. Like I loved reading about Italy and Greece and the shops she went to, the restaurants she ate at, the kind of food she had, the weather. Like I was in New York, it was Christmas, it was minus 15 degrees, but in my head I was like on that beach in Italy with her. I will say that I do not like reading about the pandemic. Like as soon as I see the word pandemic, I'm like, no, I don't want to know about it. I read a romantic comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld, and I love Curtis Sittenfeld's writing, and the book the whole way through was so good until I got to the pandemic, and I was like, why are we writing in emails? Why am I reading a section of just emails back and forth of people struggling through the pandemic? Like, let's not mention it. Let's pretend it didn't exist. Like, I will happily, for the purpose of reading, just think the pandemic never existed, and I don't want to read about it in fiction, or my escapism does not want to bring me back into the pandemic and what an awful time that was. So yeah, that's my thoughts on like pandemic in like COVID in fiction. I just don't want to know about it. The next book I read in January was Layla by Colleen Hoover. Now I have read a lot of Colleen Hoover books. I have enjoyed most of them. Some of them I'm a bit like here and there. This one was probably the worst one that I read, I would say. I gave it 2 stars. I did not enjoy it. I thought it was so weird. The concept, the paranormal. I love Verity. Like Verity kept me reading. Like Verity kept me hooked from like the first page. This one though, with the woo-woo and the paranormal, I don't know. Like the characters were so hateful. Like so unlikable. This guy's girlfriend had a brain injury and she was acting differently because of her brain injury, and he didn't like her anymore. And it was also, the brain injury was caused by him. So let me give you the premise. So basically, this guy and this girl meet, and then he has a crazy ex who comes and hunts them down, shoots his new girlfriend in the head. She sustains a brain injury, and because of her new personality, the boyfriend now is kind of like, don't really like you anymore. The whole book I was like, this guy, oh my god, your ex shot this girl in the head. She is alive, and you now don't like her new personality because of what your ex did to her brain? What? But anyway, the story unravels. The story gets weirder and weirder. It's very who is who, what's going on. It just doesn't make sense, and yeah, was not for me. I give it a 2 out of 5, and I will not be rushing to read any more Colleen Hoover at the minute. Give me a month or so and I'll probably be back into it, but for now, Layla by Colleen Hoover was not the one. I would love to hear your thoughts as well, but every book is so problematic. Her characters have like a long list of emotional issues, mental issues, like disorders. It's like she has like a checklist of like 20 different things she wants to include with these characters. I'm like, they don't need them. Have a person that doesn't have like baggage and baggage and baggage. It's too much. Some of it is just too much. I'm like, no, we don't need this. It doesn't need, the character does not need to be any more troubled. Okay, and then book number 8 of January was Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. So I'd seen this everywhere, like posters all over New York for the movie with Amy Adams. And I think Jack Edwards had read it as well before, and I was so intrigued. It was not what I expected in the slightest, and to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I don't want to give too much away because I went in completely not knowing anything about it, and I was so weirded out, surprised, and like nicely surprised. I kind of enjoyed it, and I was like, do you know what, I'm just going to let myself run with this story, see where it goes, the corners this is taken. It was strange, but weirdly enjoyable. I'm not rushing to go and watch the movie, but I'm intrigued to see how they do it and like how it's perceived, and yeah. It's very, very artistic, out there, very contemporary fiction, but like with a twist. So I give it a 3 out of 5. If you do read it, go in with like open eyes and like to expect the unexpected, basically. And if you have read it, let me know your thoughts. Okay, and then the last book that I read in January that I was most anticipated, that I could not give it to get my hands on. I was so surprised to actually pick this up in Bali, of all places. I got it the second day after it came out in Bali, and I read it in like 3 days. I was hooked. I also did have Bali, so that helped. I was lying in bed all day, every day. But so many thoughts. This is the 3rd installment, if you don't know, of the Empyrean series. You have Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and then you have now Onyx Storm. So it is my least favourite of the 3. Fourth Wing is by far my favourite. Hooked from the first page, couldn't put it down. I'm not a fantasy reader. As I keep saying, I'm not a fantasy reader, even though I'm now completely absorbed in the world of fantasy. But I wasn't at the time, and it got me into fantasy, and nothing has compared really since, I would say. But yes, Onyx Storm. It took me a long time at the start to get into it and to remember who was who, what the hell happened at the end of book 2, where they were, what these places were, what these words meant. And it did take a bit of time to just get back into the world of Fourth Wing and Baz guys. Like, how are we saying that word? I don't know. But I did eventually start to get into the book, and I did get a lot better. I would say the dialogue in this book is probably my favourite, and Riddick really comes into his own in this book. I loved him in this. The dragons as well, like seeing more of their personalities come through, their dialogue with like their writers, even the other dragons coming through a bit more. But I will say this really felt like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the movie. So if you've seen that, like, it basically sets the whole context for the final part, and it's a bit of a filler and just a bit of an information dump is what it is. I felt like this was very much that. There was a section of the book where they're kind of going hunting for something, which also felt like whenever Harry and Ron and Hermione go hunting for Horcruxes, is what this felt like. So a lot of the time there wasn't really much happening, and it all felt like it was building up towards this huge moment and this villain that they're trying to get away from defeat. And I was like, okay, like this book is kind of leading into book 4, where book 4 is going to be the showdown, and it's going to be everything's going to happen. But then it all happened in like the last 20 pages. So it wrapped up so quickly, and it just fast forwarded so quickly. And then the style of the book changed, where you had different characters' perspectives towards the end. There was a part where my jaw did drop, but then it kind of went backwards, and I don't know if the book would have been better if they kept it that way, where a certain character drops off, but then there was another character that drops off, a main character, and that was very sad. Like, that was, I get why the different perspectives were put into that part of the book, but it just felt like the whole book was gearing up towards massive showdown that could have been another book in itself, I think, but it was just the last like 20 pages, and I was like, is this where it ends? Is this how it ends? It didn't make sense to me, and I'm already highly anticipating book number 4, which I've heard is only going to be 2 years in the making, but I might reread the series and like read it in order of the 3. I don't know. I'll see what I think, but yeah, I just didn't love it. I give it 4 stars because I love the series and I love the story and all the dialogue, characters, this one, but just the ending and the format of the book didn't live up to what I hoped it would be. But yeah, so many thoughts on Onyx Storm. So if you have read it and you have any theories, any thoughts like mine, do let me know. And that's it for January. So that was the 9 books that I read in January. I'll put their stars on the screen so you can see what I rated each one. I will say favourite was Blessings, and standouts whereas Paris Hilton's book, believe it or not, Onyx Storm, Winter Garden, Enchanted Islands, and Foster by Keegan. Okay, February. So we only read 7 books in February, and a big one of that was A Court of Mist and Fury, book 2 in the Avatar series, but we'll get to that because it was the last book that I read in February. But I started off strong with Yellowface. Now, I have wanted to read this for the longest time. I don't have my stars on my list on my phone, but I think I can remember what I give each book. But Yellowface, I've wanted to read so long. It has been everywhere the last year, especially last summer. It was like the beach read of the year. And I only recently realised that R.F. Kuang wrote Yellowface and has also written Babel, which to me are completely different books. Like, I didn't know that that was the same author for each, and to me they're like in different ballparks. So I really enjoyed Yellowface. It had a lot of satire and some like twists and turns to kind of keep you reading. It was funny in a way, and you know, you wished the best and also the worst for the main character. Like, she was very unlikable and then quite likable, and yeah, it was just a funny book. I thought it was funny, and I can see why it was like a beach read for 2024. It was a nice segue into February reading for me after reading Onyx Storm. So I would recommend. I think I give it 4 stars because I knew reading it that I would remember the book after for quite a while and have like a lot of thoughts to say about it, even though I haven't really said much about it. But yeah, it will definitely be a memorable book, I think, for me. So I give it 4 stars. And I would highly encourage reading it. So the next book that I read was Pageboy by Elliot Page, which I think I give 3 stars. So Elliot Page is, I would say, a bit unknown to me. I know they were in Juno and I have never seen Juno, but I worked for Gucci before I went on my travels in their like influence marketing and PR department on their fragrances and makeup, and in the new Gucci Guilty campaign, Elliot Page was one of the main cast alongside A$AP Rocky and Julia Garner. So I was kind of reading more about Elliot Page, especially because I was putting their profile like out to media and we were doing interviews and stuff with Elliot. So when I saw the book was 99p on the Kindle sale, I was like, I will read this and I want to know more about Elliot. So the memoir was interesting about their childhood, and they were like a child actor, which I didn't even know, from like a very young age, like teenage years. And I know like that really impacts a lot of child actors into their later teens, 20s, especially looking at like Lindsay Lohan, Demi Lovato, all the Disney kids. We all know what happened with them. So Elliot talks like a lot about what that world was like when they were a teenager and coming from Canada, like moving to LA, moving to New York, their life, especially going through that period of knowing that they wanted to transition and going through their sexuality and their relationships with like their family, like their dad, their mom, people around them, Hollywood especially. So really intriguing, and definitely one to pick up if you do want to know more about Elliot Page's life and career. Not also a large book, but I think it was like less than 200 pages, so a bit of a short one as well and easy to get through. Okay, so the next one that I read was also a short book. It was Killjoy by Holly Jackson. So this was basically a prequel of the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which I read a few years ago now. So it's a YA young adult murder mystery, which has now been made into a TV series on Netflix, which isn't great. I have watched it and I don't even think I made it to the end of it because I was like, this is rubbish. But Killjoy was like a really pleasant like murder mystery night with friends and turns into like a real murder mystery. So if you're in the mood for some young adult reading, some very easy reading, definitely pick it up. It's a very short story and just makes for some like lighthearted fun. Then the next book I read was The Rewrite by Lizzie Damilola Blackburn. This one I think got on NetGalley, and it was an interesting one. So basically the premise of this is this ghostwriter, and she's been tasked to write this reality star's memoir. This reality star has just come out of The Villa, which is basically Love Island. Now, I don't know if there would be any memoir that I would want to read of someone that has just freshly come off the latest season of Love Island, but we'll move. And then this guy that's on Love Island, The Villa, is her ex. So she's been paired up with him, she didn't know who he was, and now she has to work with him to write his memoir, and he basically broke up with her to go on The Villa, Love Island. So it's like quirky, it's funny, it's, you know, it's a enemies to lovers. It's like the perfect rom-com, and I could see it if it was like a movie, like a little rom-com you'd watch with like your girlfriends. It was a very pleasant read. The realism wasn't there for me. Like, I was like, I would not be reading a memoir from, you know, Ronnie Vint, who has just come out of the All Stars. Like, I would not be running to the shelves to read that, but it was good. It was enjoyable. So if you're into Love Island, maybe you might like it. Okay, the next one that I read was Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. So this is about Northern Ireland and the troubles I'm from Northern Ireland. I have read many a book about the Troubles. Many of them are the same. Many of them they're good. And I would say for the most part, a lot of them do leave me a bit angry that they're too tame, or they leave out a lot of important things that happened. And yeah, there's just a lot of thoughts there. But this one, Trespasses, is probably one of the best that I have read about the Troubles. And I would highly, highly recommend, if you don't know about the Troubles, what happened in Northern Ireland, the history of Northern Ireland. It's only in like the 1980s as well, so not that long ago. Plus the fact that it is still quite like that today, especially where I'm from. A lot of sectarianism and riots, bomb scares, shootings, murders, everything in the town that I'm from. So that is lovely, and it was just a refreshing read. I will say though that there is like a little boy character in this book who is in her class. She's a teacher, and he carried the whole book. Like, he was hilarious. He was like a little old man in like a 9-year-old's body. He was brilliant. And I was laughing out loud like a lot of the way through the book. There's also Irish language involved in the book, which I loved because I'm learning Irish. Shout out to Kneecap, who have turned the whole country into learning Irish again. But yeah, really highly enjoyable. Definitely, if that little character wasn't in it, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. But loved him. I do see a lot of similarities between books set in Northern Ireland about the Troubles and books set in Glasgow, like Shuggy Bean. A lot of Douglas Stewart's books are similar themselves, but also similar to like books set in Northern Ireland. Yeah, would highly recommend Trespasses. I think you should give it a go. I love books set in Northern Ireland. Like I said, I've read a lot of them, and Trespasses is definitely up there with like one of the best. And then following on from that, then the next book that I read was Hook, Line and Single by Phoebe MacLeod, which was very different from reading about the Troubles and reading about conflict and war, sectarianism. It's very much like a rom-com romance novel, but set on a cruise ship. So it reminded me a bit of like Tessa Bailey's writing, and it was just like a funny comedy romance novel. So a bit of escapism set in different places around Europe. I will say that the girl who's on the cruise basically is tricked into the cruise by her best friend, who is single and wants to find a guy. This other girl, she is very independent, does not need a boy in her life, but the friend signs them up for a like singles cruise. So the whole point is to like, you know, it's like traffic light system, you do a lot of speed dating, and you hopefully meet your match on this cruise. So the best friend isn't the nicest for tricking her, and basically off the bat the best friend finds a guy that she likes straight away and like leaves her other friend who didn't want to be on this cruise in the first place to have a solo holiday. And throughout the book, even like they mention like, oh, your friends are not that nice to you, or like she doesn't really treat you very well. And I personally agreed, but it wasn't really developed and wasn't really called out as much as it should have been, I don't think. So yeah, like the main character's best friend is not very likable throughout the book, but the love story is there. And I mean, it's so typical the way it was going to go. It's very cliche, like you already know where the book is going, but it's nice escapism. You get to travel with the book, and it was a nice rom-com love story, so I would recommend it. Okay, and then the final book that I read in February, this video is going to be so long and I really want to do it quickly. The final book was A Court of Mist and Fury. So this is book 2 in the ACOTAR series. I read A Court of Thorn and Roses first, and then A Court of Mist and Fury is the second book. Now, I do not get the hype. I really, really don't. I don't understand. The world and its sister is obsessed with this series and I can't get into it. Book 1, I was like, I don't get it. Where is the hype? Where is the obsession? I don't really know who's who. I can't picture this world building, the courts, the over the wall. I was like, I can't see it in my head. I can't picture anything. The masks and the creatures, and I was having a very hard time reading the first book. And basically because of all the hype, I was like, when will this click in place for me? I just don't get it. But persevered. I finished the book. I think I gave it like 3 stars, and I was like, right, I've heard the second book is better, so I will go into the second book with open eyes and I'll read it. I'll see how it is. Tell me why I was 60% of the way through the book before I actually got intrigued and I actually got excited to read it again. Like, I struggled so much with the second book as well, and I just couldn't get into it. The characters, the dialogue, like nothing was working for me. I was like, who is who again? I can't remember. I can't keep up with what is going on and where this book is going. The different like I can't say this word because of my accent, but powers. I would usually say powers that like this girl has. And yeah, it took to be about like 60% through that I was like, okay, now I'm interested. And I really like the dynamics between Rysand and Farah and their like relationship and stuff, and it just took a long time for me to get into, and I am not rushing to read book 3. I won't be buying it. It is in my library. I have placed a reserve on it, so I think I'm going to be able to get it at the end of the month to continue with the series, but I am like really not looking forward to it. But now that I've started, like I cannot not finish anything. Like I will never ever DNF a book. Like I always have to finish a book that I started, because you know, what if it gets better towards the end? So I will have to finish this series, and there's like another 3 books I think in the series. I do also have Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas on my Kindle, and I know everyone's obsessed with that series as well, but there is like 8 or 9 books in that series, so that is a big commitment. If I do start that, I will have to finish it, so we shall see. But yeah, like tell me what I'm missing in ACOTAR. Like I am missing the good. What is good about it? Please tell me. I don't know if it's because I read Fourth Wing first, and I am so obsessed with Fourth Wing. I love Fourth Wing, everything about it, and it's meant to be so similar to ACOTAR. Like everyone who loves ACOTAR loves Fourth Wing, everyone who loves Fourth Wing loves ACOTAR, and I cannot get into it. Like I don't know what it is. So rant over. I'm not enjoying ACOTAR, basically. That is the gist of that, and that is the books for February. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this probably mess of a video. First ever video for books on my channel, which is very, very exciting. Hopefully I will be back at the end of next month. We are now in March, and talking about the books that I read in March. Let me know your thoughts on this video, if it's worth watching, if I should come back and do this again next month, I don't know. And yeah, if you've read any of the books that I have read, have any thoughts on them, do let me know. Also, if there are any other books that you suggest that are like similar to the ones I've read and I really liked, let me know that as well. You can follow me on Goodreads at Orla Claire, on Instagram at Orla Claire, and hopefully we can be good friends and talk about books a lot. And I'm hoping I can like build this little community of book lovers on here as well. And yeah, we'll see how things go this year, and if I can get more book content, because I have 1 physical book like on my person. I own 1 physical book, which is shocking, and I have my Kindle, which has over 100 books, but I can't wait to get like a little book cart in my new apartment, in my new room. And yeah, if you want to know more about me moving to Australia and the last year of traveling, do have a look at the other videos on my YouTube. I've got everything on there, like travel wise and Australia wise. So yeah, I will shut up because I just cannot stop talking, and I will see you in the next monthly roundup. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.